All right, national championship will go down on Monday night, but we have more salt to rub in your wounds. So here's the question: would the Dogs be favored over Washington and or Michigan? Matt, you can go. I have the definitive answer, but go ahead.
Yeah, this is just a guess. I think they would be. I think it'd be an even matched team with both. I think Washington would be able to throw the ball against Georgia, and I think Michigan would be able to run the ball successfully against Georgia. If Georgia played Texas 5 times, or Michigan 5 times, excuse me, I think they could win 3. And same with Washington. If Georgia played Washington on a neutral field 5 times, I think Georgia probably wins 3 of those times. So my guess right now, Ryan, is that Georgia would be favored against both of those head-to-head on a neutral field.
And that's kind of a similar way that we viewed them against Alabama, was that we think Alabama would probably win or that Georgia would win 6 or 7 of those games against Alabama out of 10, and that we just maybe saw one of the scenarios in which they lost. Yeah, are there lines available?
There
like,
are.
are
Go
there
ahead.
hypothetical lines available?
Yes.
Okay, I would guess Georgia would be favored over Washington by 5.5.
Okay.
And I'd probably guess by about 2 over Michigan.
All right, so this is according to Hard Rock. So Hard Rock, for those who don't know, it's not just the name of a stadium; it is also a legal gambling outfit in Florida. So just like the name of the Hard Rock Stadium, Georgia would be a 6.5 point favorite over Washington. That's pretty significant, by the way. Georgia would be a 2.5 point favorite over Michigan. Matt said 3 of 5. If you're a 7 point, you're almost 6.5. You're almost 4 out of 5 winning. 2.5 is much closer to 3 out of 5. So you should probably win if you're a 2.5 point favorite. Like Michigan probably should have beaten Alabama. They did, and they covered, for the record, for some of us on the call. No, just for one of us. I love that. But look, I think it underscores. I don't know how many times we're going to do these videos, but they did. The opportunity was there, and it didn't happen. And the opportunity is going to be there for Michigan or UW, and they better take advantage of it, because I don't know how many more times. I mean, neither of these teams have played for the national championship this century, Ryan. They've only been in the playoff a combined 5 times. I think that's correct too. They're not exactly racking up wins. They both got their first college football playoff wins the other day. So I think that, this isn't something that's been going on for a long time, like Alabama, Georgia, Clemson, Ohio State. Those are teams that have done it a lot. These guys have not.
Yeah, but looking at it this year, Georgia wasn't as dominant, the last couple of years, obviously, as it was this year, and we felt probably would beat everybody. It just not as confidently. Like, the confidence in that it was definitely a little bit lower. I think if it was maybe the last 2 years, we would just snap. Yeah, Georgia would be favored by a significant margin over these guys. This season, I mean, I think, like Matt said, Michigan and Washington would figure out ways to score on Georgia, and they showed this year that they were vulnerable. Yeah, because look, what was one of Georgia's issues against Alabama was not finishing on Jalen Milroe, and that's been like one of the biggest issues in all of the games that they've struggled in defensively over the last few years. I mean, I think that they've shown that time and time again with Washington. If you don't get to this guy, like, they're good enough to get open and score the ball. So that would be, the issue with Washington. Would Michigan out physical Georgia? I mean, do you think that they would?
Go ahead, Matt.
I mean, Georgia lost the battle in the trenches to Alabama, and then Alabama kind of got pushed around by Michigan. I think Michigan's defense would give Georgia some real trouble at times, and I think they are complete on offense. Not necessarily passing game, but I like the running backs. Blake Corum's very good, and the offensive line is good, and they've got more weapons than maybe I realized throughout the regular season. So I think that could be a really tough matchup, and it wouldn't surprise me at all if Michigan, if they were to have played Alabama, won the game in the trenches. That wouldn't surprise me at all. Michael Penix would be the best quarterback they've played against all season, and he's the best quarterback that Michigan is going to see all season. And I kind of am leaning Washington's way for that national championship, because that guy is just so impressive. The more I watch him, the more I'm thinking, man, like Ryan's thinking, I want him to be playing for. This guy's dropping balls in there left and right. He throws a beautiful deep ball. He can throw some rockets in there. I'm all in on the kid, and I think he would give Georgia some problems too. But at the end of the day, they've got to execute play by play and do their job. They did not do that well enough against Alabama. They didn't do it well enough against Auburn for 3 quarters. So we've seen them. I mean, again, this is a team that almost gave up a touchdown or field goal, points to the opposing team almost every game of the season. So we've seen them get off to some slow starts. We've seen them not dominate in the trenches. So I could definitely see Michigan and Washington giving them a hard time, but nobody was beating Georgia the night they played Kentucky or Ole Miss. If that Georgia comes out, that was the best team in the country both those nights. I think we both talked about that in riding home. So if that Georgia came to play and they execute at a high level that we've seen them a good bit of the season, yeah, I do think they would win both of those games. And again, probably 3 out of 5 and, maybe 4 out of 5. But I think both could give Georgia some real trouble.
So I think go ahead, Ryan.
Yeah. I think that we've focused a lot on the Alabama that showed up in the SEC championship. And I think we haven't talked a lot about the Georgia that showed up. I wanted to get you guys' opinion on that.
Can we come back to that? I do want to say I think Georgia actually beat both these teams if they played them. Of course, it would depend on what happens. So much of sports is about matchups. As an old tennis guy, you never wanted to play a left-handed person. That was so annoying. The ball came a different way. It was just weird. You almost had to trust that. I mean, like your eyes were lying to you because the guy's hitting the ball with the wrong hand. But with Bama and Georgia, I think that Alabama, I talked about this. I wrote about this. I think they were not a good that was not the matchup Alabama wanted, was playing Michigan. I think Georgia matched up better with Michigan than they did with Alabama. I think that, if we're talking about fully healthy Georgia, I mean, I don't think they lose to anybody, to be honest with you. I think it's 4 out of 5 or 8 out of 10, whatever. I think that the way Michigan played yesterday, they'd have gotten beat. But they to their credit have played well the days that they had to play. Now, with that said, they were playing Iowa in their biggest game of the season. They were playing Ohio State. The biggest game of the season, they played Ohio State, who clearly is not what they've been in the past. The second biggest game that they played was Iowa. So they kind of get a pass into the playoff, to be honest with you. They didn't play anybody out of the league that mattered. And, they played well at the right time. I mean, I don't know who's going to win, and I want to get back to what Ryan was saying, but I do think so much of this is about matchups. Michigan does not have the playmakers that typical offenses in the SEC do. Neither does Alabama. Are we allowed to say that? I mean, like, if Jermaine Burton is your best guy, I mean, and I'm not wanting to start turning this to talk about Jermaine Burton, for God's sakes, okay? That's not where I'm going, but he was their most productive receiver. He is not what they've had in the past. The quarterback's not what they've had in the past. The running backs look pretty good. And obviously, and God, this poor kid, the center ain't what he was been in the past either. But anyway, I think in matchup wise, Michigan was fortunate to win that game, frankly. Both teams, the winner of that game was fortunate to win that game because they played like trash. Matt, go ahead. I'm sorry, Ryan.
Yeah, I mean, the end of regulation was at the 1 yard line.
That's insane.
That could have.
So bad.
I mean, we're talking about a half-yard line. Michigan should have lost.
The close of both of these games was horrifically played football and some quite questionable coaching from UW. Why didn't they take it? Can someone quickly, before you get to the next point, can someone quickly explain to me do you run it once and then take 2 knees? And I don't understand that. Just punt the ball with 4 or 5 seconds left. It wasn't a lot of time left.
Punt it out of bounds.
I'll tell him myself. I didn't see that final Texas drive because I didn't think there was enough time left. Exactly. And I woke up and I'm like, they had a chance at the very end there? Really? How did that – what?
And why didn't they throw it to AD 3 times in the end zone to steal that game?
That got special. But I will say this. None of the teams we've talked about have a Brock Bowers. And if Brock Bowers is healthy, he's a problem for everyone. And he was not 100% against Alabama, and he still caught 7 or 8 passes, Ryan. So back to Dean's point, 100% healthy Georgia, really, really tough to beat.
Yeah, well, we never saw it.
No, not the whole season.
We literally never saw it.
But
so,
you got to get through that. Hey, man, listen, you got to get through that. They got through it in 22 to win the national championship. They didn't lose a game. And no, it had what was Nolan, 15 overall? Number 15 overall guy didn't play for half the season. And then Jalen Carter, who was 8, whatever, who was 8, their most dominant player, missed, I don't know, 5 games, something like that. I mean, like, you got to get through the injuries, Matt.
They were without George Pickens for basically the entire 2021 season.
I forgot about that. Yeah.
I mean, this team just wasn't as good.
Yeah.
I mean,
no, they weren't.
At the end of the day, this team wasn't as good, and that was kind of the deciding factor.
Yeah. But what were you going to say, Matt?
I was just going to say, and maybe that was for the other video, but, talking about the playoffs, this could get to a point where it's the healthiest team. Depth is going to matter. Really, at quarterback, Florida State fans, you got to have a backup quarterback. Depth matters. All quarterbacks matter. And this could be a situation where I think the national championship game is on January 20th.
Yeah.
I mean, it's going to be a long season next year. Everyone's going to deal with injuries. You better be as healthy as possible going into the playoffs and have your team ready and as healthy as possible. It may not be the best team wins the championship. It might be the best, healthiest team who wins it all.
Is that not this year?
It could be, yeah. I mean, yeah.
It could be. And the league you play in, helps with that to some degree. But I will say that, I don't think it's good for college football versus Bama and Georgia if we're talking about who's the least injured, because they can just throw guys at you. It's trench warfare for Alabama and Georgia. And, I just, everybody that's not in recruiting, that's sort of a national person, tries to, the top 10 this year. Listen, man, Georgia and Alabama racked up. They don't worry about the top 10, like individual players. Georgia almost got 3 of those guys, by the way. They managed only 2 or 1. Who was it? Robinson and KJ? Was KJ top 10?
Yeah.
Oh, and the linebacker.
Justin Williams. Number 1 linebacker, number 1 cornerback, number 1 safety.
It ain't the same. So that's what I would be worried. If I were college football, if I am whoever the runner-up for the ACC is next year, let's say it's Miami. And Miami is – why are you laughing, Matt? Let's say it's Georgia Tech. At least they've got a pulse. Okay?
Bad next. So
Tech?
bad.
Tech?
No, the ACC in general.
It's not a great league. Let's say it's Tech. And they are going to travel to LSU. They are not winning that game. They cannot throw people at LSU. NC State cannot throw people up. So in the future, that's what it'll be. But the reality is, as we get back to the topic, Georgia would have been a slight favorite over Michigan. They'd have been a more significant favorite over UW. UW better get it together. No more heart attack endings. No, I mean, they've been, the Washington State game, the Oregon game, the game last night. I mean, get it together. Here's your shot at the national championship. Closing remarks from Ryan first, and then Matt.
Yeah, if Georgia was pitted against these teams, I think I've been pretty clear. I think Georgia would have won the national championship if given the opportunity to be in that Final Four. I just thought they were the best team in the country this year, so I agree that they'd be favored.
Yeah, I think they'll be right back here fighting for a national championship spot next year.
All right, well, and we won't even be close to the national championship. We got 3 more weeks at this point in the national championship. I hope you're ready for Atlanta in January, Matt. Middle to late January. All right, thanks for watching.